Hey, what is going on? It is Crypto Bobby. I hope you're having a great day, great night, wherever you are watching in from. To shake things up a little bit, rather than bring the standard daily video, which is just me talking to you, I brought on a guest that I reached out to. I've enjoyed his thoughts on Twitter. It's twitter.com/at CryptoEthan. Ethan Ackerman, I brought him on the show, and I really enjoyed the conversation with him. We had a chance to speak for about 30 minutes about his overall macro thoughts, Bitcoin versus altcoins a little bit when you're looking at trading, his experience, risk mitigation, a lot of really good things. So we will hop into that interview in a second. I will be doing another YouTube Live Crypto Happy Hour this evening at 8 p.m. So if you'd like to join for that, hit the subscribe button and the notify bell. Other than that, let's hop into the interview with at CryptoEthan. Let's go. Well, thanks for taking the time to join me, Ethan. Really excited to be talking to you here today. And I came across you on Twitter a little bit of time ago and really liked a lot of the insight that you have, generally speaking, about the crypto markets. And for those of the people that are watching right now that maybe aren't familiar with you, could you give a little bit of just your own personal background and kind of how you got into crypto? Would love to hear about that.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Ethan. I go by at CryptoEthan on Twitter, and I am a sophomore in college right now. I go to Colgate University, and I've been trading cryptocurrencies for just about 4 years now.
Awesome. And with kind of your just crypto investing in general, I've seen you have some really kind of interesting thoughts on like a macro level about sometimes the balance between Bitcoin and Ethereum, or excuse me, Bitcoin and altcoins. There was even a tweet I think that we both kind of looked at previously talking about right now the level of consolidation around Bitcoin and kind of what that means for altcoins. I'd love just your thought process now, even on like general, what you might be seeing overall from the market as we're looking at kind of where Bitcoin is at and where some of these altcoins are at, because a lot of people I feel like a lot of new people in the space right now are either super excited about altcoins and really into alts, but then have maybe no interest or don't really like Bitcoin. But the two are, at least in my opinion, pretty correlated. So I'd love to hear just your kind of overall thought process right now when you're looking at either Bitcoin or altcoins and how the market's moving at this point.
Sure. So on a general level, the cryptocurrency market, there's two main segments in it. There's Bitcoin, which generally moves in its own direction. Then there's altcoins, which generally move in their own direction. And sometimes they overlap or they go in the same way,
Sure.
but other times they don't. So it might be helpful if we took a little bit of a historical perspective as to how this sort of correlation has manifested over time. So the first big pump that Bitcoin had was back in 2013,
Yep.
when the price went from, I think it was like $20 to $200 in early 2013, consolidated around maybe $100 or so for the rest of the year. And then in December or so, it spiked up to 1,200, so 1,200, which was really, really high for the time. And then right about that time, altcoins started rising as well. And altcoins continued their rise through about halfway through 2014. So I got into the crypto markets around probably March 2014. So I got in right when altcoins were going up, but Bitcoin had already peaked and was starting to go down a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's sort of an example of, sometimes altcoins and Bitcoin overlap in their direction, sometimes they don't. And then, in the latter half of 2014, they were both going down together. They were flat pretty much throughout 2015. They started to pick up in 2016, Bitcoin especially. But then looking more in 2017, more recently, let me see if I can pull up these charts here.
Sure.
So if we look more recently, let's take a look at altcoins in the past year or so.
It's a terrible chart.
Yeah, this is not great. It's not scaled great, but as we can see,
It's tough to make money in that.
It is, yeah, it is. It's funny. But so in the first half of the year, altcoins were growing, but they were growing kind of slowly. They went from a total market cap of about $2 billion to, in May, it was around 14 billion, which is a lot. That's about a 7x growth.
Yeah.
But then you see it really start to pick up here. Throughout the month of May, it essentially goes up 3 times, I think, just roughly. Flattens out around June, goes up a little bit during July. But then we see altcoins start to stagnate throughout September, October, November.
Mm-hmm.
But if we take a look at Bitcoin during that same period, don't know if I have a Bitcoin chart. I do. Um, so if we look at Bitcoin throughout the latter half of 2017, we can see that, throughout July, it sort of flattened out. But in August, it went up. It was flat in September, but up in October. And so it started off in July around 2,500, and it ended November around, ended up around $10,000. So that's a 4x gain. But if we look at altcoins throughout that same period, starting in, let's say, early July, it was at about $50 billion market cap. And at the end of November, it was around, 145 billion. So it's a 3x gain. So altcoins underperformed Bitcoin during that period. But let's look at the past month or so in particular, right? So starting off in December, Bitcoin went up to a high of around almost $20,000. Not quite, but almost $20,000. And it sort of stagnated around the middle of December. And right now we're at about $14,000. So it doubled during that month, but now we're down a bit. So it's up about half, 1.5x. But looking at altcoins, you can see they've really just taken off during this period, right? So it went from about $150 billion market cap to a high of 500 billion. So that's a multiplier of about 3.5 times. So you can see that altcoins have significantly outperformed Bitcoin. And so we can see there's periods where the performance of altcoins and Bitcoins have been correlated, especially looking at the early half of 2017. But there's periods where they sort of dissociated, right? Like looking at the later half of 2017, where altcoins were up a little bit, but underperforming Bitcoin. And then also in the past few months when Bitcoin sort of stagnated and altcoins went up. And you can see this reflected very well in the Bitcoin dominance ratio, right? So in the first half of 2017, you can see Bitcoin dominance went from its high of around 80 to 90%, which it maintained pretty strongly for the past about 3 years now.
Yeah.
It sort of fell off a cliff here, though. Went from about 85% to a low of around 40%. So that's a lot of dominance that Bitcoin lost, meaning that there's a lot of money that was made in altcoins, especially Ethereum. Look at the dark blue line that represents Ethereum.
The old
Ethereum
flippening.
went from what's up?
It was the flippening, the whole flippening craziness.
Yeah, that was that was the what people thought was going to happen, right? Ethereum was going to become the #1 cryptocurrency. Not quite, but it almost got there. It went from 5% of the crypto markets to about 30%, and it sort of declined a bit. But more recently, if you can see this light gray line, it's kind of faint, but it went from in about late November, it was at about 12%. And this represents all sort of small cap, mid cap cryptocurrencies. Everything that's not listed explicitly here in this list, that's what the gray line represents. So the gray line, so all other cryptocurrencies went from about 12% of the market cap in the start of December to about 24% of the market cap now. So that's a doubling of its dominance. So not only have altcoins gone up with respect to Bitcoin, but they've gone up, I think, twice as much as Bitcoin has.
Yeah, that's definitely been fascinating to watch, at least in my opinion. The one thing that I think is interesting, and I'd even love to at some point from maybe I could run numbers on that, but yeah, the other component of this is pretty interesting because there's only one Bitcoin, but there's a new ICO every single day. There's a new fork every single day. So while Bitcoin might be losing market share, you have 7, 8 months ago, there was no Bitcoin Cash. There was no Bitcoin Gold. There weren't all these ICOs that have come out that have eaten up, $500 million, billion-dollar market caps too, which I think that's it's an interesting component to this. And that gray line there does bring up a good point too, as far as not just like the Ethereums and the Ripples potentially taking market share or growing up their own market caps, but also these other crypto that have hit the scene, whether it's been ICOs or whether it's just been a fork or something like that. That type of just growth in the space has been pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, we've seen so many new cryptocurrencies come out. I think when I started trading, there were 20 or 30, major cryptocurrencies that people really traded. But since then, we have probably about 1,500 cryptocurrencies that exist right now. That's a lot. That is a lot of new cryptocurrencies and a lot of new money flowing in, right? Especially for these ones that are, top 10, top 20 market cap.
And most I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
As far as, so, a lot of the people that watch, I would say a lot of the people that kind of watch my channel might be somewhat newer to the cryptocurrency space. Some have some pretty strong crypto trading experience, but for somebody that is new to the world of crypto investing, what type of maybe advice would you have for them, or is there anything that you would recommend to just be a better or a more knowledgeable investor in the long run?
Sure. So I started off really going headfirst trading. So when I first discovered cryptocurrencies and cryptocurrency markets, I at first put a little money in and I started trading. And I firmly believe that that's one of the best ways to learn how to trade, right? If you're trying to pick up a new skill, the best way to learn is by doing. So let's say you're trying to learn how to play a new sport. Let's say volleyball, because I play volleyball. I don't know if you guys can see, but I play volleyball. So if you want to learn how to play volleyball, let's say, you wouldn't, sit on the sidelines and just watch, right? You might for a little bit, and that's true. But the best way to learn how to play a sport is, you go out there, you hit a couple balls, and you play 6-on-6. You just try and get experience, a feel for how to do it. Same thing with trading, right? I'm not saying to put a lot of money in. You can start off, especially with cryptocurrency markets, you can put in like $10 or so, and that's more than enough. Maybe a little bit more, but 50, who knows?
Sure.
It's up to you. But you can put in, just a little bit of money. You don't need much, and just sort of mess around with it, and try your luck with the markets, look at some charts, read up on some of these cryptocurrencies, and just try and get a grasp for what exactly cryptocurrencies are and how the market moves. And then also, I think for me, trading was the best way that, I learned how to, like hands-on trading was the best way for me to learn how to
Sure.
trade, because some of the best lessons you learn when you feel it the most, right? And so if you're trading and you lose money, you're going to feel that harder than if, you were just looking at a chart and you thought, okay, maybe it'll go up, and then you check back a couple of days later and it's down. You're not really going to feel that, right? But if you had put like $5 in and that $5 is now $3, you're going to feel that a little bit.
Yeah,
And feeling is sort of the best way to actually, drill in those lessons that you need to learn to be a successful trader.
for sure. And going on the subject of just your Twitter and kind of your style in general, so I've seen you've referenced to charting a little bit. As far as your breakdown when you're researching a cryptocurrency between technical analysis and maybe like fundamental analysis, do you have a preference? Do you have a split as far as how you research a cryptocurrency and eventually make a decision to enter into a trade? What's that like mindset like for you when you're looking to enter in a trade?
Sure. So I think with cryptocurrencies, it's a little bit different than if you're trading a stock or a traditional currency, because the crypto markets are a lot newer. They're based on different fundamentals, but still ultimately you want to understand what it is you're buying, especially with more exotic cryptocurrencies. So the first thing I would recommend is if you're gonna invest in a cryptocurrency, you're gonna want to know what it does, right? It's like if you buy a stock and you have no idea what the company does, right? Why would you do that? So you're going to want to, research who's on the developer team. When did this coin come out? Was it an ICO? You might want to read the white paper. Some of these coins are really, really complex in, their technical features, and their white paper might be a bit more complex. But, just try and understand what it is that cryptocurrency does, right? And first of all, you want to make sure it's not a scam, right? So there's a lot of scams floating around.
A
right
lot
now.
of scams.
Yeah. So you want to be careful with those, because if you get caught up in a scam, you're going to lose your money probably. So be careful with scams. Make sure that the product is legit. Make sure that the development team is competent. Make sure the people who are running it know what they're doing. And then you can start to look at the chart and see, okay, let's see if we can find a good entry, right? Technical analysis, from my experience, is more so for precision entries and exits.
Mm-hmm.
Fundamental analysis is underlying everything, right? You want to know what it is you're owning. But if you want to know what the best price is to enter and exit, you generally want to turn to technical analysis. And the best way to start by that is reading up on some resources. Make sure you can understand and read a price chart. If it's a line chart, a candlestick chart, you want to know what those terms mean. You want to look up support and resistance levels as well, because that's sort of the backbone of technical analysis. You want to look into maybe some basic indicators. You want to look into some charting tools. And one of the sites that I actually recommend the most is called tradingview.com. They provide free charting services for a lot of altcoins and cryptocurrencies out there. It's a really great service. They offer a ton of technical tools. So I check that out, just mess around with the charts on there. And, just see if you can get a grasp for technical analysis. There's a ton of resources online you can learn from.
Awesome. And I think that's a really good point too. And I am extremely weak in technical analysis. I'm trying to build up any level of expertise in that, but I mean, most of my background is just, or not even just background in general, but most of my experience and how I decide to enter and exit into something is through fundamental analysis and reading the white paper and checking out just social sentiment and Twitter and Reddit and all that good stuff, and seeing what people are saying about it. But as far as technical analysis goes, I know a lot of people all have kind of different maybe indicators or methods that they go to, or preferences. I feel like most people tend to have like 2 or 3 things that they stick by when you might be looking at like an entry or an exit. Do you have anything from a technical analysis perspective that you really like or you tend to lean on when it comes down to making technical decisions?
Sure. So I generally try and keep it simple when I do technical analysis. I look for, trend lines. I look at sentiment. I use what's known as a moving average, which is an average of the past set number of closing prices, to sort of get a feel for, what sentiment is the market trending up or down? And I also sort of look and see if there's any clear support or resistance levels. Support and resistance being key price levels where the price of an asset is likely to interact a certain way with it in the future. So if it's a resistance level, right, it might, if it's above the asset price, then you might see that the price of that asset, go up to the price of that asset, or go up to the resistance level, and then fall back down. Same thing for support, right? If you have a support level that's below the price of the asset, you might see the price go down to that level and then bounce off of it. Also, you could also see it break through, but that's just a key level to watch. Mm-hmm. So support and resistance levels are pretty key indicators or pretty key tools. A lot of people have favorite indicators that they use too. There's a variety of indicators you can use. MACD is a big one. Bollinger Bands is another one. RSI is another one. There's a huge number of indicators that you can use.
Anytime you go into TradingView or Coinigy, there's 7,000 to select from.
Yeah, it's almost overwhelming. But if you can just find like that one indicator that works for you, that you can read and understand, and you can make successful trades based on, and if you understand what support and resistance is, how it works, and you can draw those lines on a chart, then you probably have a good system in the works.
For sure. When you are looking at the market now and kind of how everything is developing, do you have any, I guess, trends or insights that you see maybe developing into the future? I know it's been a crazy 2017 was nuts, so it's pretty difficult to even come close to predicting. When you look back at what happened in 2017, I think there were very few people that probably anywhere close to predicted how things would move out. But when you're looking at how things are building up at this point in time, is there anything you see that you're trying to potentially play from just a market standpoint, whether it's a move by Bitcoin or certain altcoins keeping to run for this altcoin summer season everybody keeps talking and joking about? Is there anything out there that you see occurring at this point?
I think it's really important to keep an eye on the more macro picture.
Sure.
So let me see if I can pull this picture up. But you want to keep an eye on what the market cycle looks like, right? Because at the end of the day, let me see if I can pull this picture up. Sorry about this.
Yeah, no problem.
Basically, every single asset follows a traditional market cycle, meaning it has its period of expansion in which the price rises quite aggressively, followed by a period of downturn when the price corrects to its fair value or whatever, and then it sort of averages out over the long run. Let me share this picture with you. That's sort of a really good template for it. Okay, so this is sort of a template for how market cycles work. And a market cycle is generally a cycle that most assets go through. It's something we saw with the housing market back in 2007. It's something we saw with .com stocks back in 2000. And it's something we could be seeing with cryptocurrency markets right now, right? Is we see this initial sort of run up here. And this is the sort of emotions that are, generally exhibited by traders when the price hits that certain point, right?
Yeah.
So you start off at disbelief, right? You're like, okay, this rally is going to fail like all the others. And this is sort of what people might have been feeling back in maybe early 2016, mid 2016, when the price rose from about $500 to $1,000. Because that price, we haven't seen $1,000. At least back then, we hadn't seen $1,000
2 years.
for the past 2 or 3 years, right? So there's a lot of disbelief, right? Like, how can the price be at this level? This is crazy. This is probably just going to fail like all the other rallies. And then we see a little hope as the price continues to go up. We see optimism, belief, and then the emotions get stronger and stronger as the price goes up, right? So when the price of Bitcoin was at $9,000, I remember there was distinctly less media coverage than there is when Bitcoin is, right now about 15,000, or when it was at
Oh,
19,000.
absolutely.
Yeah, so the thrill really, really picked up quite quickly with Bitcoin. And I don't know if we've hit the top here, this euphoria point. We could have, but ultimately, what I think is going to happen is eventually we're going to see sort of a complacency period with Bitcoin, where price is going to sort of stagnate for a while, and then it could potentially fall back down. We would see, some people having anxiety. They'd be in denial over their losses. Some would panic, and then at the end, they'd capitulate and sell out. And then price would sort of flatten out, stay low for quite a while, and then ultimately you see this disbelief over here. So you see another cycle start to take hold. And this is important because markets are very, very cyclical. We saw this template exhibited very, very clearly back in 2013 and 2014, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So if I can
Spot on.
if I can pull up the chart, let me see. Let me see if this goes back all the way. But I don't know if it does. But either way, we saw this exhibited back in 2013. The price going into the year was, I think, around $20, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we went up in the start of the year. We hit about $150 to $200. So that's about a 10x run right there. So we saw, potential disbelief. And the rally did fail in a little bit, in one sense. The price fell
portion,
back.
yeah.
Yeah. Price fell back to about $50 or so. And that's where it went up until the end of the year, right? And then Bitcoin went really parabolic, and it went up to about $1,200. And that was the euphoria peak right there. And then it sort of settled off around $1,800. And then in the later half of 2014, we really started to see it slide. We hit $600, then we hit $400, and then at the start of 2015, we hit a low of about $160 per Bitcoin. And that was when we saw, because I got into the markets a few months before that. So during that period, we saw a lot of traders. It was really hard to make money. So a lot of traders were, losing money. You couldn't make much. So a lot of people were quitting, leaving the markets, getting angry. And that's when we saw that bottom there. That $160 was the absolute low for Bitcoin. Price sort of hovered around $200 and $300 in the years following. So in 2015, 2016, start of 2016, the price was hovering between $300, $400. And then we started to see it pick up towards the end of 2016, pick $1,000. So I do believe that this is a market cycle. We are in a market cycle right now. I don't think we're going to see, price holds, these levels forever. I think eventually we're going to see a pullback. I don't know when. I don't know when the top is going to be. I'm not going to call tops because everyone's been calling tops for the past 2 years.
And they get blown the hell out.
Yeah, myself included. I was wrong. I called a couple tops. So I don't know when we're going to hit the peak, but I think eventually we're going to hit the peak, and then we're going to eventually see a pretty serious sell-off, like we saw sort of back in 2014.
It's funny too when you look at this and you can think about it in the a crypto macro perspective. And yeah, I totally agree about that 2013, 2014 timeframe, because this was literally the exact cycle where Bitcoin went through the roof, went to $1,000, went to like $1,200, pulled back, the altcoins went up, and then the space just kind of slowly, there was like that period of complacency, then it just kind of slowly pulled off, and just a lot of people, even when you're looking at like Reddit and Twitter, and I remember like the certain subreddits, just like the activity started dying, all this stuff started pulling back, so that was kind of interesting. And now you can even see this type of psychology in some of the altcoins that have pumped recently. Like there were some altcoins that just pumped through the roof in the past like 2 or 3 weeks, and then they've fallen and corrected 50-60%. And there have been people that have been basically stricken with anxiety, freaking out with denial, and then I've even seen some people just start totally going through the capitulation phase, getting completely out of the markets at this
Mm-hmm.
point and getting just, taking 60-70% losses after something spikes up to 3,000%. So yeah, it's been that, seeing that on both like a macro entire crypto market, and then
Mm-hmm.
when you look at like maybe specific altcoins that do really well,
Mm-hmm.
it just continues to to kind of play itself out over time.
Yeah. And the thing about this pattern here is that it exists on multiple time frames. So like I sort of explained how it existed back in, how we saw this bubble happen in about 2013, 2014, and then we saw this in 2015. But you can also see this happen maybe in the course of a month or so, right?
Yeah.
You described some alts that went through that period. Specifically, we've seen NXT and I think Verge go through this cycle
Oh
over the
yeah.
past month or so. But also, if you look at the price of Bitcoin, let me see if I can pull this up. Oh gosh. But in I think it was September or July, right? So we've seen, if we look a little bit more in depth, we can see we saw. Let's see what a good example is. But you can see sort of how it follows this sort of cyclical nature, right? So at the start of 2017, we saw a price rally from about $800 to a peak of 1,100. It fell pretty sharply back down to around $800, just about where it started at. Then it was flat for a bit. Then it continued to rise, went down again. So you see this sort of sinusoidal pattern, right? Where we
Yeah.
see it go up and down, up and down, up and down. And if you look deeper into the time frames, you see it sort of exhibit this sort of pump pattern or this bubble pattern, market cycle pattern. So
For sure.
yeah.
So looking at this and this, like the kind of the market cycles and a lot of the focus on this. So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, and myself included, and I'm trying to get different thoughts on this too, because, if you've had any bit of money in the marketplace in the past, really in the past 6 months, even in the past 2 or 3 months, you're probably up pretty significantly, and maybe over invested in some assets, even if you didn't put a ton of money from a fiat perspective in, if you didn't put a ton of dollars and something pumps 2,000%, now you have a pretty big holding of that asset. I'd love to hear just your thoughts on both like risk mitigation on the way up and maybe on the way down, any type of strategies that you have there, or just overall thoughts about how you maybe mitigate risk, even though crypto itself is just a crazy highly volatile on both on the way up and on the way down.
Sure. So my biggest piece of advice would be never invest or trade with anything more than you're willing to lose, especially with cryptocurrencies. I mean, these markets are so volatile, and over the past year or so, we've seen them go nothing but up, and they've gone up by an unbelievable percent. I think Bitcoin's up like 2,000% in 2017, but that comes with a downside risk as well. In the past, we've seen Bitcoin fall up to 90% in over a year or in a year. So if you'd be okay losing 90% of whatever you put into it, then great. You can trade with that. But if that's like money that you're saving for, college or buying a home or a new car or, medical care or whatever, if that's money that you need, then don't trade with that money, because you need to be okay with losing that money, because it's a real possibility that you could lose that money.
Yeah.
But then sort of going more nuanced into it, over the past year, Bitcoin's gone up quite a bit. Altcoins are up quite a bit. And so it's never really a bad idea to take money off the table, right? Because ultimately profit is profit, and you can never lose money taking profit, right? Because if you're up and you take money, you take profit off the table, that's money in your pocket, and that's pretty good. It's all about, your own personal risk tolerance, how much that money means to you personally, and ultimately what your beliefs are about the future.
Awesome. Yeah, I pretty much spot on agree with all that too. And I think there's kind of a bad tendency, at least in my mind, in like the crypto world and the crypto investing world, where people kind of don't encourage other people to take profit and call them like, hey, you got weak hands and all this stuff. And it's like, that couldn't be farther from the truth. Like, if you want to take profit, and whether that's $5 in profit or if that's a life-changing amount of money for you in profit, I think, anybody should be able to do that. And anybody, if you aren't comfortable with the amount of money that you have in the space, I think that's definitely solid advice. And then even too, going back to the original point, as far as having money that you're willing to lose, everybody says that. And then, unless you've been in the space for a while, where you've actually seen these 80% corrections and things like that. Like, it's easy to say, yeah, I'm cool losing this 10 grand, but then when your 10 grand gets turned into $2,000, were you really cool losing that or not? So I think that's pretty solid thought there too.
Yeah.
Well, coming up to, kind of coming up to like the end of the conversation here, is there anything maybe from like an advice perspective or anything maybe that we didn't cover that you think would be helpful to talk to people about? Would love to hear anything maybe I missed in the overall discussion.
Sure. I think one big thing is, don't be afraid to learn from, the people out there who've done this before already. I got in the markets back in 2014. A lot of the people I follow on Twitter got in the markets around that time as well. We've seen the bear market in cryptocurrencies. We are sort of prepared for what's coming. We know what the possibilities are. And so I think there's no shame in learning from others, asking questions, interacting with people on various sort of forms of social media or messaging boards, Reddit, Twitter. I personally prefer Twitter. I've sort of built up a community on, or not built up, but I've been a part of a community on there.
Yeah.
And it's been a really, really great learning experience for me. That's how I learned it first, is I learned just sort of collaborating with these people who were, this was their first time investing as well. Not a whole lot of people in the crypto Twitter community, at least, had prior financial experience before this. They really come from all walks of life, which is really, really cool. Yeah. So I would definitely encourage people to take advantage of, those around you, whether that be people in real life. If you know anyone in real life who's interested in cryptocurrencies, maybe chat with them about it. Look online for resources, and don't be afraid to, ask for help. I have my DMs open, so if anyone wants to ask for any advice, I'm here to answer questions.
Awesome. And yeah, I mean, I think that's too a solid point, and that's one of the big reasons I had you on, because I've followed you on Twitter for a little bit of time. I've kind of been watching what you've had to say, and I've been enjoying it, and I've been learning from it, and that's what I've been trying to do with just the channel in general. Trying to learn from as many people as possible, because there's always going to be, especially in crypto, there's so many people that are smarter, that are smarter than me. So there's so many people that I'm trying to learn from as much as possible, and then hopefully kind of pass that information along. And one of the big reasons that I was really excited to have you on today. So I really do appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much for it.
Of course.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.